Well, good morning, everybody, and a very warm Sydney morning it is too. You will all see on your chairs that we've put information packs. They, as some of you have already discovered, they very conveniently double up as fans, so please feel free to use them in that way as well. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the country on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Before we start, I would like to, we're going to just show a couple of very short videos. I promise they're quite short, and then we'll start proceedings. Thank you.
AFCA is a very exciting new vision. It's a single one-stop shop to provide consumers and small businesses alike with a simple process for ensuring that if they have unresolved complaints with their financial firm about the services they have provided, that they can find a way to get redress.
The main benefits for consumers are that there is a one-stop shop now, and this is a merger of three organisations, which is the Financial Ombudsman Service, the Credit and Investment Ombudsman, and also the work that formerly went to the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. Bringing together the work of the three organisations does also mean that we have a more efficient scheme, a more efficient system, and we'll be able to provide much greater support and data back to business to help inform as to what's going on, and also lessons as to how you can do things differently.
Community expectations haven't been met in terms of transparency and accountability in the financial industry, and I think AFCA's role more than ever is key in restoring and rebuilding trust in the industry and making sure that there is accountability to restore trust for consumers and small business.
And going to court is often prohibitively expensive and very difficult for people. So this scheme provides an alternative that is cost effective, that is independent and fair, and enables both sides to try and settle matters rather than litigate them through the courts.
We want AFCA members to help us shape something great. So AFCA will be about not only resolving individual disputes, but will be about working with industry to ensure that it improves its practices, to ensure that it has effective internal dispute resolution mechanisms and systems, and to ensure fair conduct, fair service and fair treatment for all its clients.
So over the next 6 to 9 months, we will be out and about right across the country. We will be holding workshops with members. We want to hear from members as to what you think of the current services that you've been getting and how we can do things better.
Proactive and customer-focused services are what AFCA will provide. We'll listen to what you've got to say, we'll listen to our stakeholders, we'll look at the information, we'll have highly skilled staff that can deal with the complaint, we'll review it independently, and we'll take into account what's fair in terms of ours.
Too often in the past, I believe, it has taken too long to resolve some of these disputes, and actually justice delayed is sometimes no justice at all. So I'm passionate about ensuring that we operate in a timely, professional and efficient way, but fundamental to all the service has got to be that we are considering things and treating everybody fairly, and we're basing our decisions on what is fair in all the circumstances of the case.
The Australian Financial Complaints Authority, or AFCA, is your one-stop shop to resolve a complaint about a financial product or service. AFCA replaces the Financial Ombudsman Service, the Credit and Investments Ombudsman, and the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. With AFCA, there is now one place that consumers and small businesses can go if they have a complaint about a financial product or service, like loans, credit cards and short-term finance, all kinds of insurance, investments and advice, and superannuation. Many of us use financial services every day, and when things go wrong, it can be stressful. Whether you're a consumer or small business owner, if you have a problem that can't be resolved directly with your financial firm, AFCA is here to help. So when should you get in touch? If you have a complaint about a financial product or service, your first step is to contact your financial firm directly to see if it can be resolved. If you can't reach an agreement or you're not happy with the answer, AFCA is your next step. You can reach us at our website, by phone, email or mail, and we will guide you through the process of making a complaint. Then we will work with you and your financial firm to find a fair outcome. AFCA's service is fair, free and independent. Making a complaint is easy and is an alternative to going to court. Our decisions are binding on financial firms. AFCA is for everyone, whether you live in East Malvern, East Cannington or East Arnhem Land. We work with consumers, small businesses and industry to resolve and reduce financial disputes and to help improve financial services. To find out more, visit afca.org.au.
You can clap the videos if you want. I know people don't know what to do. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speakers here today. We're very lucky to have speakers both from industry, from the consumer movement, as well as from government. We're delighted to be joined by the Honourable Anna Bligh, CEO of the Australian Banking Association, Mr. Alan Kirkland, the CEO of Choice, and one of the three panellists on the 2016 Ramsey Review into Dispute Resolution and Complaints Framework, Danielle Press, the newly instated ASIC Commissioner of Superannuation, and of course ACNC's inaugural chair, the Honourable Helen Coonan. I'd also like to acknowledge all the members of the AFCA board who are with us here today. It's a fantastic board. It's wonderful to work with a board that has 8 really intelligent and dynamic women and 3 men who are equally intelligent and dynamic, but it's quite a refreshing change, I can assure you, to have a board composition of this, and they are incredibly informed, supportive, as well as appropriately challenging. We're also joined today by members of the AFCA Transition Board, and those who served as members of the former FOS board are with us as well today, and that includes some of the AFCA board members as well. And I'm delighted that we're joined today by Professor the Honourable Michael Lavarche, who is the former FOS board chair, former chair of the Transition Board, and former Attorney General. I would also like to acknowledge the chair of the Life Code Compliance Committee, Anne Brown, who's with us, the chair of the Insurance Broker Code Compliance Committee, Michael Gill. I'd also like to welcome the Commonwealth Ombudsman, Michael Manthorpe, the South Australian Small Business Commissioner, John Chapman, Sally Lone, the Chief Executive of the Financial Services Council, Janine Young, the Ombudsman at EWON, Nina Pai, who has joined us from Treasury, who was very important in the establishment of AFCA. And I'm conscious that that is just a few of the people who are in the room. So if I haven't mentioned you, please do excuse me, but it's just we have so many people who have made such a contribution here today. But I would like to acknowledge all the other ombudsmen and regulators, everybody from industry, from Treasury, from ASIC, and all our distinguished guests from industry peak bodies and consumer groups. I would like to introduce Uncle Ray Davison, who is an elder of the Gadigal clan of the Eora Nation. And Uncle Ray is going to join us now on the stage and give us our welcome to country. So thank you, Uncle Ray.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name's Uncle Ray Davison. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council. The Lands Council, as members, being the custodians to the clan groups of the Eora Nation, give me permission today to come along and welcome you all to country. So, good morning to all dignitaries, special guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Warrain, Talawalda. each and every opportunity I get to give Welcome to Country, I love once again expressing to the people I'm talking to the importance of it and what it means. And so coming down here on right in the heartland of my traditional land, it's really special each and every time. But some days, such as today, we have appointments and places you've got to be which just don't match up. And my day started like that today, so I had to be, for the people that are familiar with the Sydney region, I had to be at Technology Park at 8:30 this morning for a 10 to 9 Welcome to Country, and as things don't work out, they don't work out. And I was fortunate enough to get in touch with the lovely lady here and explain my situation about actually trying to get down here, which it's not that far, but as a crow flies, but coming on public transport is a bit of a bother. So getting here this morning was a real wonder, and I've actually made it on time, and I can't believe it, but it's really special and unique, and I think I should thank our transport system, Sydney transport system. It's marvellous, and getting off at here at Warrane and walking around that in a lovely companionship of all the people going to and from places, it's quite marvellous. So for me, believe me, each and every time I have opportunity to give Welcome to Country, I love expressing to the people that I'm talking to the importance of it. So regardless of whether I give Welcome to Country once a year or 100 times a year, each and every time I have that opportunity, I look upon it as the first time in those regards, because I'm always of the thought there has to be somebody hearing Welcome to Country for the first time, or maybe hearing me for the first time. So I like to make a special in those regards. Now, you all know that Welcome to Country has its origins right here on the east coast of Australia, and it goes back many thousands of years. We've always had Welcome to Country when we have big celebrations and big corroborees, and we celebrate by song and dance. It's done today as I'm doing it orally. It's no less significant and holds the same importance. So this is a gathering, this is a corroboree. We're continuing on those tradition that's been going on for thousands of years, because we've had big corroborees here, about 40 corroborees each year, every year, and you can imagine if you equate that into over thousands of years, it's quite a few corroborees. So once again, we're here continuing on that tradition, because Welcome to Country doesn't see Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal or our ethnicity, it just sees us as Australians. So regardless of whether we've been here for 10,000 years, 1 year, or a new child born today, if you're born on country, then you're part of country. And I love also taking the opportunity to express to people that we all have one mother, and that's Mother Earth. Mother Earth knows each and every one of us, and she loves us all equally. It doesn't matter who we are, where we come from, we're all part of the same, we're all loved the same. So as I look around at people that, pardon me, that I have opportunity to give Welcome to Country to, believe me, it's really special and unique each and every time I do that. I can see most people's ancestral lines from overseas, and I just remind us, that's wonderful, it owns you, and you own it, it'll always be part of you. But if you're born on country here, then you belong to country and you're part of country, and if your children are born on country, then you belong. And when we talk about being born on country, as Australians, we all know that we don't own country, country owns us. So each and every opportunity I get, I can't help it, it's the old Aboriginal in me, or old urban Australian in me, that I've got a skite about being on the most beautiful traditional land in the most beautiful city in the most beautiful country in the world. But no matter who we are and what part of Australia we come from, or our ancestral line from overseas, we all come from beautiful country. But once again, welcome to the most beautiful. Just in keeping, and cheekily, I can't help but say that, because we all know in our hearts that no matter where we come from, what part of the country we come from, that we come from the best country. And I use analogies when I have the time, and sometimes I like to use the analogy of it just to give you an idea of what we're talking about belonging to country. You may come from a town that has a wonderful little church and some beautiful river system and some lovely mountain range. So when you're away from country, that's what you think of, and you think of family and friends when you're away from the country. Or you may come from a big city such as Sydney, and your best memories are, pardon me, your high school years and so forth, and your family and friends. When you're away from country, you think of country, but just remember, each and every time you come and go from country, it's not just your direct ancestors who are there greeting you and farewelling you each and every time you come and go. It's the people that have been on that land for thousands of years. They know you as well. They greet you and farewell you each and every time you come and go from country, because we all belong to country and they know you personally. So once again, to each and every one of you, welcome to my country, welcome to your country, welcome to our country. And just in keeping with Aboriginal custom and protocol, I'd like to pay respects to elders and descendants, both past and present, of my people, the Gadigal people of the Eora, and thank them for the caring of the waterways and the land for the thousands of years of which we all benefit from today, and extend that welcome and gratitude once again to each and every one of you, and pay respects to your elders and descendants, both past and present as well, for without those people, none of us would be here today. So when we do that, we just take that moment to remember that they aren't just a date and a name from the past, but they're real people that had real lives and real happiness and real sorrow, the same as us today. And once again, without them, we would not be here. So to each and every one of you, welcome. And just in closing, the words I say when I close, when I have opportunity to give welcome to country and I close it, are really important, and they have great meaning, because we believe within our culture at any given time there are thousands of our ancestors around us. So I firmly believe that today, being down here on my heartland. So to each and every one of you, once again, welcome, and may the spirits of my ancestors walk beside you and protect you whilst you're on Gadigal land, Eora country, as I know they walk beside and protect me. So thank you all very much, and I'm glad I didn't hold you up, but because I know each and every opportunity I get to give welcome to country, it's as important as the last one, and it's as important as the next one I do, because each and every opportunity I get, I know that I'm representing the traditional people of this area, and I take great happiness in doing that. So once again, thank you all, and please forgive me. You're going to see my back because I'm running to go to another one. So thank you all very much, and I hope today's productive. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Uncle Ray, for that very warm welcome to country. And I don't think looking out on the terrace today, any of us would disagree with you about how beautiful Gadigal land is. So thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now delighted to introduce the Honourable Anna Bligh. Anna will be known to everybody in this room. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Banking Association. Her priorities include strengthening the culture in banking and delivering the right outcomes for customers. Anna has had a long and distinguished career in politics. She was, of course, the Premier of Queensland for almost 5 years until March 2012. She was the Deputy Premier and Treasurer of Queensland and held ministerial responsibilities in education, social welfare, arts, economic and state development and infrastructure. Anna's leadership came to national and international attention as she led the response and recovery effort to the devastating floods in Queensland in January 2011. In recognition of her eminent service to the Parliament of Queensland and as an advocate for education, the role of women in public life and services to the not-for-profit sector, where of course I know Anna's significant contribution there, Anna received a companion in the General Division of the Order of Australia Award in the 2017 Australia Day Honours List. Please join me in welcoming Anna.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, David, and thank you to AFCA for giving me the opportunity to share in the Sydney launch and a celebration of the birth of this new organisation. I acknowledge Helen Coonan, the inaugural chair of AFCA, all of the other distinguished guests who are here today. I think it would be an understatement to say that 2018 has been a very big year for banks and the financial services sector and everybody associated with it. Against the backdrop of a Royal Commission, unprecedented political scrutiny, intense public dissatisfaction and relentless change and reform, there is something very fitting, and I'd have to say refreshing, about ending the year with the launch of a new and important body dedicated to enforcing the rights of consumers. Against this backdrop, I wanted to make 3 points. Firstly, the way that customer complaints are managed, both inside and outside of organisations, is deeply grounded in conduct and culture. When companies make decisions about the resources that they will invest in resolving disputes, they are making a judgment and a statement about how they see and value their customers. It is a statement that articulates culture and it drives conduct. And it's a statement that resonates both inside the organisation and outside of it. When complaint management functions are under-resourced and relegated to junior staff, everybody understands the message. Complaints and those who make them don't matter to this company. Similarly, outside the company, customers who experience poor service and make a complaint, which is ignored or prolonged or denied, get that message very clear. Unsurprisingly, they feel unvalued, frustrated and angry. Conversely, when organisations make fixing a customer complaint a high priority, when they give those who manage complaints status and seniority and authority, and they set high benchmarks for customer complaint resolution timeframes and customer satisfaction, the message is equally loud and clear for all parties. Customers matter to this organisation, so get it right. Across the banking sector today, every bank has been considering their own complaints functions and making improvements because they know that getting this right is central to earning back trust and reputation. Whether it's the industry-wide introduction of customer advocates in every bank, whether it's the increased investment in dispute resolution, or the restructuring of senior executive teams to include customer complaint functions, there are real and big changes afoot. In every bank, there is now work going on to make improvements. There is more to be done, but much is already underway. Which brings me to my next point. What happens inside banks and financial institutions, or any organisation, is only part of the equation. Internal dispute resolution mechanisms are always stronger when they are counterbalanced by a strong, effective external dispute resolution body. The existence of an independent external point of review for customers has a very focusing effect on internal decision makers. Inevitably, they will ask themselves, will my decision stand up to scrutiny? Is it fair? How will it look through another set of eyes? Will this end up in AFCA? When these external bodies like AFCA are free, easy to understand, one-stop shop, accessible organisations, this effect is even more powerful. The increased eligibility, access and compensation thresholds of the new AFCA will magnify this effect. A critical part of the power that the new AFCA will assert right across the sector, in my view, lies not in the disputes that it will hear and resolve, as important as these are, but in the many more that never make it to AFCA. The ones that get resolved quickly and easily through internal mechanisms because the prospect of AFCA's external review looms over every internal decision. The decisions that AFCA will make will also, in turn, set new benchmarks, and that will guide internal decision makers to make better and faster decisions. Equally, external dispute mechanisms like AFCA, in my view, should act as a canary in a coal mine for companies. Where customer disputes to AFCA are significantly and regularly above a company's market share, it should give rise to serious questions within the company about the quality of its services, its products, and its internal complaints management, and likely all three. In this regard, the data that AFCA gathers and reports is a vital part of the checks and balances in the system. I encourage AFCA, in its renewed structure, to continue to report regularly and transparently and to enrich this data collection where it can, so that banks and financial institutions have a very clear picture of how they rate. Do not underestimate how competitive commercial organisations can be about these kinds of metrics. They all want to do better in this area. In the finance sector particularly, they all love numbers, they love to see evidence of improvement, and they love, more than anything, being ahead of their competitors. Your data is a powerful tool for change. I look forward to seeing you use that power for good. And finally, the new AFCA will have a new tool to guide its resolution of disputes in banking services when the new Banking Code of Practice comes into effect in July 2019. This new code gives significant new rights to both individual and small business customers. Right now, banks across the sector are preparing for the full implementation of this new code, training almost 100,000 staff and changing back-of-house systems to ensure they are ready come July next year. No doubt, the new rights and entitlements that are enshrined in this code will require AFCA consideration and interpretation along the way and will evolve. The code itself will evolve through that process. The new code will also allow AFCA to set new benchmarks for service across the whole financial sector. This in its turn will be enhanced as other parts of the industry update and develop their own codes, with new codes or redrafts of codes happening right now in areas like insurance and other parts of the sector. I look forward to watching AFCA develop and grow into its new mandate. As it does so, I have every confidence that it will empower customers and protect their rights, and that this in turn will improve the service culture of banks and the whole financial sector. This is important and powerful work. It has the support of the banking and finance sector, and I want to congratulate everyone who has worked to shape the new AFCA to date. I know it's, I think, 2 weeks old, and that it's already sparked interest from the public across Australia, and that there's been a real uptick in disputes, many of which I hope are already resolved, David. But you really were ready to go on day one, and that's, I think, a great credit. It is no mean feat to amalgamate 3 organisations that have had their own history, their own traditions, and developed in their own ways. So I congratulate everybody who's been part of that process to shape the new AFCA, and I wish all of you who sail in her the very best in meeting what I think are legitimate and strong expectations that now rest on your shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And we're very conscious of the obligations and expectations on us as well. I'd like to now welcome Mr. Alan Kirkland to the stage. Alan has been the CEO of Choice, Australia's largest consumer organisation, since 2012. Alan has a background in the justice system, having previously been the CEO of Legal Aid New South Wales, Executive Director of the Australian Law Reform Commission, I'm going to have to take a breath, and Chair of the National Legal Assistance Advisory Board. He's also been a part-time member of a number of state and federal tribunals. Alan has a long-term interest in redressing socio-economic disadvantage, having served on the boards of the Australian Council of Social Service, the Public Interest Advocacy Centre and the Welfare Rights Centre. And as I said earlier, in 2016-17, Alan was one of the members of the Ramsay Review into external dispute resolution processes, which set the blueprint and the way forward for AFCA. Please join me in welcoming Alan to the stage.
Thanks, David, and thanks to Helen Coonan for the invitation to speak this morning. I think I'm probably here with a few hats on, partly as a Choice representative, and in a way, sharing the stage with Anna reflects the partnership between industry and consumer groups that has been core to the development and success of EDR in Australia. But obviously also here, as part of my role, excuse me while I adjust my clothing, in the Ramsay Review, which was a really fascinating process, and I guess I want to acknowledge and give the apologies of Professor Ian Ramsay and Julie Abramson, my colleagues in that process, who were 2 of the most amazing people that you could work with on such a set of complex issues. But I also want to acknowledge Nina Pai, who I hadn't realised was going to be in the room, but led the Secretariat and really probably has put more time over the last 2 years into the creation of AFCA than any other person in the country, and did a phenomenal job in supporting us and in the period since, along with the staff of the Secretariat. We commenced our review, our review was announced actually in April 2016, which is of course just before the 2016 federal election. As a result of the election, we didn't really start until about September. And if you think about it, that's only about 2 years ago. In that 2 years, our panel completed 2 reports with a number of stages of consultation feeding into each. The AFCA transition team has done its work, the legislation has passed, ASIC's released new regulatory guidance, AFCA has been endorsed, the new board has been appointed, new terms of reference and a new funding model have been developed, and AFCA is up and running. That's quite a phenomenal list of achievements in such a short period of time. And it was an interesting process that got us there. In the context of the review itself, there was the whole debate about the Banking Tribunal in late 2016. Remember that? It feels like a long time ago. That was just as we were starting our consultations, and it caused a lot of suspicion in that I think there were some media articles saying that our report and recommendations had already been predetermined by the government. But that debate really helped people to engage with our process, And that was actually really critical to how the process developed from there. One thing that struck us in those early stages was how quickly we got this sort of coalescence of consensus among key stakeholders around some of the central issues in the review. And the central message we got was that EDR, as it had developed in Australia, was good. It was strong, it enjoyed multi-partisan support, it was seen as efficient, not perfect, but delivering damn good outcomes almost all of the time. And it enjoyed that support from both consumer and industry stakeholders. The Banking Tribunal had no friends, but I want to say to the government's credit, it quickly took our advice on that issue and moved on to focusing on how to strengthen EDR. And that ongoing support from the government for EDR from that point has been really critical to us reaching the point that we're at today. Of course, nobody in our process said that EDR was perfect. There were a number of suggestions for reform, and they were reflected in our final report. Some of the core ones were the fact that the monetary limits were clearly too low, a point that Anna raised in her speech. They had failed to keep pace with key economic indicators, such as home prices in major cities, but more importantly, they'd failed to keep pace with community and political expectations, and this was causing an issue with confidence in the EDR system. There were particular problems in relation to access to justice for small business, and the monetary limits and compensation caps were important there as well. There were gaps and overlaps in membership, requirements around membership of EDR schemes, and ASIC lacked the powers that it needed to effectively oversee EDR schemes. There was a fair bit of agreement on those issues. There were, of course, other issues that were particularly contentious. One was that of competition between schemes, which by that point had sort of reduced through mergers and amalgamations to really just two schemes being FOS and CIO in the EDR part of the process. Every time that we as a panel unpicked this idea of competition between EDR schemes from first principles, it was really impossible to see how competition could be expected to produce good outcomes for consumers, which is of course the objective of competition law and policy in Australia. And I should say, in reaching this view, this was in no way a reflection on the staff of CIO or FOS. We visited each scheme on more than one occasion and were repeatedly impressed by the skill and professionalism and commitment of the staff. Our assessment on competition on that issue was very much a principles-based assessment of how to make EDR work best for end users. The other hairy issue was, of course, super. I want to acknowledge the really excellent work of Helen Davis and the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal staff. We were impressed with their work, and they engaged incredibly constructively through our process to help us refine our recommendations, while always being absolutely clear that they felt their view was that the SCT should be retained. But once again, our view on this issue came down to principles. That the EDR model was, based on the evidence, much more capable of producing good consumer outcomes with much greater ability to adapt to industry changes than a model that was dependent on legislation and funding provided through the budget process. Now, I know that many people in the super industry were very attached to the SCT, but I genuinely believe that as super funds get to understand the benefits of an EDR model for their members, they'll come to be advocates for EDR in the same way as other participants in the financial system are. Of course, there's a bit of unfinished business from our work and the work that's happened since, and there's one that I want to point to. It's the key issue in our oft-forgotten second report, which is the issue of unpaid compensation. And I really want to highlight this because I think despite the consensus and excitement in the room today, it's a key risk to the system. Much of the political pressure that led to the establishment of the EDR review was about people who'd lost money, had a valid claim to compensation that was never going to be paid. And unless we fix that problem is going to recur. And if it happens on a mass scale, then we do actually face a further crisis of community and political confidence in the EDR system and in AFCA. And I'm glad to see AFCA continuing to advocate for a last resort compensation scheme. But for now, let's celebrate what we've managed to achieve together. This is really big, bold and audacious, and as I said at the start, rapid reform. We've got a new body with a great board, a broader remit, expanded powers and strong political support. This is far more than a merger of FOS and CIO and the SCT. AFCA is newer, bigger and stronger and needs to work in new ways. It's the next big step in the development of Australia's world-leading EDR framework, and I really hope that we can all work together to support its continued evolution and success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'd now like to welcome Danielle Press. In August this year, the Treasurer appointed Danielle as Commissioner of Superannuation at ASIC. Danielle brings broad corporate and specialist experience in superannuation to ASIC. She was the CEO of the Meyer family company from 2016 to 2017, CEO of Equip Super from 2010 to 2016, held various senior roles at UBS Global Asset Management, and has previously worked at SBC Asset Management, and prior to that was an analyst at the Reserve Bank of Australia. So eminently qualified. Please join me in welcoming Danielle.
Thank you for that welcome. And thank you for inviting me to speak here today. It is my first public speech as an ASIC Commissioner, of which I am very honoured and delighted to be able to make that here today. It's said before that AFCA is a game changer for consumer protection in Australia, and we at ASIC agree. We think it's really a really important place to be. 20 years ago, ASIC published the first regulatory guide, I'm learning RG, different language, setting out the standards that an approved scheme had to meet. At that time, the government was looking at the good advice regulations. I think that's still a work in progress, seeking to improve the quality of advice that Australian consumers are given and to ensure that they had adequate redress for the losses when advice went wrong. As part of these reforms, every licence holder had to be a member of an EDR scheme, and that was the first time ever in Australia, so 20 years ago. Under the reforms in the early 2000s, there were 7 EDR schemes in Australia, which seems probably somewhat too many. And in addition to that, there was the superannuation complaints. This multiplicity of scheme is a legacy of history rather than of design, clearly. And now we resolved through 20 years ago, and today in 2018, we have a single, well-resourced scheme which is built on the considerable experience of the past, which, from an ASIC perspective, we think is extraordinary and really important. The other thing that we think is really important in the way that AFCA is working is that there is now better communication between us as a regulator and AFCA, as the EDR scheme. So we are able to share information, and that flow of information we believe will turn out to be better outcomes for consumers. Change isn't always easy. This one has been extraordinarily fast, but we're very confident that AFCA emerges as a strong and strategically important player in the financial services system. What we do today, and what I do here today, is challenge financial firms who are members of AFCA to not only meet their obligations of AFCA, but to actually learn from the complaints experience. You'll find out more from the people that tell you you're doing things wrong than those that tell you you're doing things right. So we challenge you to use that information to improve the customer service, to improve the product, and to improve the service offering that we're making to all Australians. On behalf of the ASIC Commission, I've been asked, and I would like to personally thank and recognise the contributions made by the previous schemes, particularly the Financial Ombudsman Service, the Credit and Investment Ombudsman and the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. They have set AFCA up to be a strong and driving force within the community. For now, ASIC's focus moves away from EDR to IDR. Again, we love a 3-letter acronym. And how we help improve the internal dispute resolution, because hopefully we get to a position where we don't need external dispute resolution. I think it's a long way away, but we do look forward to that stage. We look forward to working with industry and consumer groups along that journey, and we think that this is a really important step for the industry. For now, David and team, good luck. May the force be with you. And we look forward to working with you over coming years.
Thank you. And now it's my very great pleasure to welcome to the stage the Honourable Helen Coonan, who is the inaugural chair of AFCA. Helen was appointed to that role by the Minister for Revenue and Financial Services on the 4th of May this year. Helen, as you'll all be aware, was a former Liberal member of the Australian Senate representing New South Wales from July 2016 to August 2011. Helen was appointed Minister for Revenue and Assistant Treasurer, and she was the first woman to be appointed to a Treasury ministerial position in Australia, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Go, Helen. And she was also Minister for Communications, Information Technology and the Arts. She's a commercial lawyer, trained mediator with a track record of leading stakeholders through major economic reforms and handling a wide range of complex policy settings. Helen is very experienced as a non-executive board member of both public and private organisations as well, and she's a fantastic chair. Please welcome Helen.
Thank you, David, for those very generous comments, but you would say that, wouldn't you? I think we can confirm your appointment here publicly this morning. Oh. That's just recognition, David. No worries. Look, I do want to acknowledge the fantastic contribution, expertise and interest of all the people in this room. It's so gratifying to see so many people who've been part of the journey and birth of this organisation to be here this morning, and a similar number of people were at the Melbourne launch that we did last week. I want to certainly acknowledge our speakers for their wonderful comments and support, Anna and Alan and Danielle. And I want to acknowledge the directors of AFCA. It was said that there is a very strong board, and they're all sitting there, and a wonderful board to work with. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to just mention very briefly two other people. Firstly, the predecessor chair of FOS, the Honourable Michael Lavache, and I want to call out his extraordinary contribution to the smooth handling and transition of the chairmanship of FOS to me while FOS was still in existence, so that I had the benefit of his wisdom and of many of the current board members who are on that board. It's often said that when you have an organisation like AFCA, you stand on the shoulders of giants, and in the case of Michael Lavache, I can certainly attest to that. I also want to acknowledge Nina Pye. I did in Melbourne, and I don't think Nina was there, but she, of course, in many respects is the mother of AFCA, and I used to keep ringing her up, and she finally said she thought she could hand me over now to FOS, and she said it was like letting go of her third child. So thank you very much, Nina, and of course to Diane Brown also from Treasury. Treasury people are often unsung heroes in this work. Often nobody knows who they are, but without their dedication and deep knowledge and commitment, we'd never get to today's. So although we launched in Melbourne on the 2nd of November, and we've been so busy since then taking a record number of phone calls and complaints, it feels like a lifetime ago. We're delighted to be with you in Sydney today. We want to share with you, and I hope you're feeling it, the excitement of launching Australia's new one-stop shop for financial dispute resolution as well as sharing our ambitious vision for the future. And I want to tell you about that because I think vision is so important, particularly at the outset of an organisation. We're committed to being much more and doing much more in our engagement with our members, with industry bodies, community groups, consumers and small businesses. And so being here with you in Sydney this morning makes the start of delivery on this commitment. I was appointed to chair AFCA at the start of May, as was said. Since then, we've been busily preparing for the birth of the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA. Yes, Danielle, I know it's another acronym to get used to, but we also did get rid of a few. One in, several out. I'm thrilled to announce to you that the delivery of our AFCA baby on the 1st of November as the new one-stop shop for financial dispute resolution in Australia is going well so far. But what a big baby it is, and it's growing by the day. How big is it? Well, AFCA has 36,000 members, and we are expecting over 55,000 complaints to be made during our first year of operation, over 1,000 each week. Well, we are certainly on track to meet these numbers. Following our national launch on the 1st of November, by 2 p.m. the next day we had received a whopping 1,200 phone calls and 551 complaints had already been lodged. This was in less than 2 days, and within the first 4 business days, these figures had ballooned to over 2,500 calls and 1,200 complaints. This morning when I was doing an interview with Wendy Harmer on radio, on the ABC radio this morning, she said, "Write this number down and put it on your fridge," and I almost said, "No, please don't." This volume of contact from consumers and small businesses, however, shows that there's a real need for a service such as the one AFCA provides, and there are many seeking redress under this new and expanded dispute resolution body. As many of you know, and we've heard this morning, AFCA is the culmination of an exhaustive review into external dispute resolution that commenced in 2016, the Ramsay Review, and I acknowledge all of the contributors there, and we had Ian at our Melbourne launch, and he was very proud of the outcome indeed. And as recommended by the review, AFCA has replaced the 3 previous schemes, as you know, so there's 3 acronyms almost gone. However, I want to stress that AFCA is not simply a regrouping of these predecessor schemes, but a new vision. And I think that's really critical to understand. We just haven't rebadged ourselves. We are a new vision. We're building upon the good work of the 3 predecessor schemes, of course, to provide great customer service to consumers, small business, and of course to our members and industry. Compared to our predecessors, we do have a significantly expanded jurisdiction, not only in terms of higher monetary limits that were much needed, but also with the addition of super complaints. These limits are significantly higher than those under the other schemes. Due to increased limits, more Australians are now able to obtain access to justice by bringing their complaint to this single, independent, alternative dispute resolution body, rather than having to navigate multiple schemes, as was mentioned, or to go to court. And of course, we have the authority to do something about finality in complaint resolution. The limit, as most of you would know, for non-super disputes has doubled from $500,000 to $1 million, and the compensation to $500,000. For super complaints, there are no monetary limits, albeit, of course, AFCA must stand in the shoes of the trustees when making decisions. We also recognise that the superannuation jurisdiction is different because it is partly prescribed by statute. For example, the fair and reasonable test and some statutory powers to help deal with death and disability complaints where third parties may be involved. We have worked closely with the Superannuation Complaints Tribunal. My thanks to them for their assistance and cooperation, to align our processes as far as possible and to make sure consumers know which scheme to access. We've also published a transitional superannuation guide that explains our superannuation jurisdiction and where it replicates or differs from the SCT. We are committed to proactive industry liaison and have formed a superannuation liaison group with representatives from across the super industry. Internally, we have 4 specialist superannuation teams. We have recruited specialist superannuation legal counsel and a superannuation specialist for our systemic issues team. In a superannuation division of just over 50 staff, 42 staff have been recruited externally for their direct experience in superannuation products and services to add to our incipient skills in this area. In terms of our small business jurisdiction, the facility limit for a small business credit facility has increased from 2 million to 5 million, and the compensation cap has more than tripled to $1 million, with a higher cap of 2 million for primary producers. Now, we are particularly passionate about small business because we think in many respects they've had a pretty raw deal in the past. We know small businesses are a key part of the Australian economy and that they have limited resources and time to navigate issues through the courts. AFCA will provide small business with a fair, free and independent way of resolving their disputes so that they can get on with their lives and businesses. With the arrival of AFCA, many small business complaints will now be covered by an external dispute resolution scheme for the very first time. With this in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to announce today that AFCA will introduce a dedicated small business ombudsman to resolve financial disputes that small businesses have with their financial service providers. Under AFCA, a small business is defined as an organisation with less than 100 employees. This is a significant increase compared to the previous scheme's jurisdiction of 20 employees. This change means that AFCA is now able to consider complaints from 98% of small businesses. This covers the vast majority of small businesses in Australia and removes the need and expense of going to court to resolve financial disputes. A dedicated small business ombudsman will ensure that we are able to deliver effective solutions for small businesses with the expertise and understanding of the issues that Australian small businesses face. With all this in play, AFCA is now likely the largest external complaints resolution organisation in Australia. As has been said, and I repeat quite simply, it is a game changer. An organisation able to resolve the vast majority of disputes between consumers and small businesses and the financial sector, and with the authority to bring these disputes to a conclusion without the need to involve ASIC or wait for ASIC or expect ASIC to solve problems or the expense of going to court. So it is very much a game changer because of the wide scope in which we can approach dispute resolution. Our vision for AFCA is no small thing. I'll say a quick word about this. We will strive for AFCA to be a world-class ombudsman that raises standards and minimises disputes, meets the diverse needs of the community it services, and which is, crucially, trusted by all. AFCA will achieve this vision by providing fair, independent and effective solutions free to consumers and small business and binding on financial firms for financial disputes. The Royal Commission has highlighted a number of issues that mean restoring and maintaining public trust is probably more critical than ever. Financial firms that are AFCA members will understand that regaining customer trust is important to the survival and health of their industry. We know that when things go wrong, it can have a catastrophic impact on individuals and extend beyond those individuals to their families and to the community more broadly, once again, particularly when a small business is in distress. AFCA will play its part in establishing, I hope, and intend to do, a new era of good faith in financial services and will herald improvements in resolving financial services complaints. Our ultimate aim is to work with our members to avoid customer complaints in the first place and reduce the number of disputes that AFCA considers. So there is just a small task ahead of us, but with the committed, experienced and energetic staff at AFCA, who are all adept at rolling up their sleeves and getting things done, I know that we are already on the way to achieving this very big vision. Pardon me. At the end of the day, of course, when someone is experiencing financial distress, it's all about people. And I want to finish by sharing a very short anecdote that the registration and referral team manager recently shared with me, and I did mention it at the Melbourne opening. This is a team at the front line, right at the coalface of the service that AFCA provides. And the reason I want to share this is because these are the people who are the first port of call for people who need to have something done to help them. Recently, this manager took an escalated call. The caller was ready to take his life. He'd given up hope. He was sleeping out of abandoned cars, had no phone credit, and was washing himself in public toilet blocks. The good news is that his issue was able to be resolved with the assistance of AFCA, but concerns lingered with this dedicated team that was looking after him. But worryingly, the team didn't hear from him until recently. They only had a number that kept ringing out. Then a couple of weeks ago, a call came in out of the blue. It was a heartfelt thank you, a true message of, I'm doing okay. Through the work that we do, we made a difference. Somebody had found hope again. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why AFCA is so important. Stories like this one explain why everyone in this room works hard to make sure that in the areas in which we work, we do the right thing. We do the right thing by our customers, our consumers, and in our work in regulators. In AFCA, we work hard to make sure each complaint is carefully reviewed, that people are listened to carefully. We want to make sure that we've got the resources we need. So when we come and ask you for more money, you'll know why. We need to make sure that we work proactively with our members to minimise disputes going forward, and most of all, that we try to prevent disputes arising in the first place. If we can make ourselves redundant in a few years' time, we'll all be very happy. But most importantly, we want everyone who deals with us to know that fairness is at the heart of everything we do. So it's with great pride and pleasure that I declare AFCA open for business with a dedicated Sydney office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you to everybody who's attended as well. I'm delighted that we now have breakfast at the back of the room and we have more tea and coffee. You may not have noticed, but we've got quite a nice terrace out there as well. And we'd be absolutely delighted if you would stay and join us for a drink and for a chat. Just before we finally finish, I'd just like to, if you'd indulge me for just one moment, 28 years ago, I was a backpacker in Sydney on a work visa, and despite my ability to make coffee and my excellent sandwich making skills, I could find absolutely nobody who would give me a summer job. And eventually somebody did give me a break, and that person is John Morrissey, who gave me a job as a legal clerk in his firm, and John's with us today. I've never had the opportunity to thank him. I would like to thank him today. Thank you.